Okay, I was talking about this last week. Here, let me sign you guys in. What's this health? Yeah, this is health. Okay. I was talking about this last week. A lot of people in the United States get a lot of their calories out of fast food. 11.3% of the daily calories are consumed from fast foods. Now, it's not that easy if you live, I don't know, in Chinle, because what's your choice? You've got Burger King and Church's. That's about it. I guess you can go to a Chinese restaurant. I don't know. I don't like their Chinese food. Frequent fast food consumption has been shown to cause weight gain. We know that. Mostly we're talking about burgers, fries, and Coke. That's normally what we're talking about when we're talking about fast foods. African Americans consume a higher percentage of calories from fast foods. It's a higher percentage than those consumed by any other group, European Americans or Hispanic Americans. In every age group, obese adults consume the highest percentage of their calories from fast foods. And like I said, if you live in Chinle, if you live in Shiprock, my goodness, you got every fast food restaurant in the book to choose from, which is kind of exciting, I guess, if you live in Shiprock. If you live here, what's your choice? In Salem. I guess there's greasy food over at the gas station. Yes. I don't know, I've never tried it. Unfortunately, people in the United States do not do a lot of their mindless eating. They do a lot of mindless eating when we do eat to get rid of food, possibly. And of course, they'll just consume food to get rid of it. And of course, I do the same thing. If I've got a bowl of chili and I've got this much left in the pot, I'll go ahead and eat the rest of that chili. It's just to get rid of it. This is a problem with supersizing. Of course, you go to McDonald's, they used to ask you to supersize it. Burger King does the same thing. It's a problem with large containers because we fill up the containers and then we eat everything in the container. This is a problem when we feel we must finish the portion that we are given. My wife complained that the reason that she was overweight was because her mother always made her clean her plate. And her mother always made her plate, so it's kind of it's a southern thing, I guess. Yeah, so my poor wife. Early dietary habits may set a lifelong pattern that leads to problems in later life. Diet has been implicated in 5 of the 10 leading causes of death: heart disease, cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, cancer, stroke, and diabetes. Of course, diabetes is a really serious problem here on the reservation. Everybody's sitting back there. I must have forgotten my deodorant again. Oh well. 40 to 45% of the total calories in average Western diet are consumed through dietary fat. We eat a lot of fat. Our bodies want fat. Our bodies need fat. Back in the day, when we were buffalo hunters, you guys were buffalo hunters. I wasn't. My people were buffalo hunters. You're on the other side of the mountains. When you guys were buffalo hunters, you used to boil the fat out of the marrow of the bones of the buffalo, and you would mix the fat with berries. I'm trying to think what they call that. Anyway, we used to do that kind of stuff because you needed the fat. You needed the fat for the wintertime. You would jerk the meat so that you would have fat in the wintertime. Humans naturally crave fat because of their ancestral feast and famine cycle. Our ancestors were far more active than we are today, but we haven't changed our eating patterns to fit our sedentary lifestyle. I was thinking about that. I think about this a lot because when I was working on the farm, we really needed breakfast and we really needed lunch. We really needed supper because we were burning a lot of calories, especially if we were baling hay. I can remember when they opened the first McDonald's and I was baling hay, we would go and buy 5 hamburgers or 5 cheeseburgers. Hamburgers were a nickel and cheeseburgers were 10 cents. And we would spend, that's 50 bales of hay. You know, if you buy 5 cheeseburgers, that's 50 bales of hay. You used to get a penny bale. And that's about a wagon load of hay. So that's what we would do. Of course, if you buy a Coke, that's another dime, so that's 60 bales of hay. Now we're getting into our second wagon. Anyway, but we have a sedentary lifestyle now. We used to burn a lot of fat when we were athletes. When we were young and we were athletes, my God, we used to go to track practice or cross-country practice, and we burned several thousand calories just by running. Of course, we were running around, and of course we didn't have a car back then, so we were running to class or walking to class or whatever. We were burning a lot of calories. And now, of course, we don't. That's one of the reasons why I only eat 2 meals a day. I figure I don't deserve that third meal. If I'm working outside and I'm doing something physical, like digging post holes or whatever, maybe I will eat 3 meals a day. But until I do a lot more work, I don't do that. There are 4 main types of dietary fats. One of them is known as trans fats. It's created when you take vegetable oil and you mix it with hydrogen. In the old days, people used to eat lard. They used to use lard to cook with. The lard is an animal fat. It's a saturated fat. But what they would do, they take vegetable oil, whatever the vegetable happened to be, usually corn oil, and they would mix it with the hydrogen and they make it into a solid mass. And then people used to used to cook with Crisco. We don't really do that very much anymore because Crisco is a trans fat, and trans fats are toxic. Of course, they don't make Crisco that way anymore. But once upon a time, your choice was eating animal fat, the lard, or eating Crisco, using Crisco to cook with. A lot of people use lard. As a matter of fact, lard is part of the formula for making taco shells. They used to do that. They don't do that anymore because it had too much. Lard is pig fat, is what it is. But we don't do that anymore. We're more conscious about what fats we're putting in our system. Saturated fats, as I said before, are animal fats. They're fats from meat, they're fats from dairy, they're fats from eggs, and that's saturated fats. So trans fats are poison. Saturated fats are not very safe. So we have 2 other types of fats, and they are polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats. Monounsaturated fats are vegetable oils like canola oil, peanut oil, and olive oil, and they are relatively safe. And the other is polyunsaturated fats. There's 2 types of polyunsaturated fats. There's omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-6 are most of your corn oil, your soybean oil, your sesame oil, and safflower oil. And then omega-3s you find in cold water fish like salmon, omega-3s, and it's also in flaxseed. So those are your 4 types of fats. Saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, and trans fats. One of the things that if you ever buy any potato chips, and I'm sure none of you eat potato chips, but if you look at the potato chip bag, you'll see that for one thing, it'll say it has no gluten in it, but it'll also say it doesn't have any trans fats. And that's because they used to have a lot of trans fats in them. And the reason they had trans fats was because it was easier to preserve them, and they had a longer shelf life if you put that hydrogen ion or the hydrogen atom in there. Not all fats are bad. Trans fats are unhealthy and should be avoided, of course, so we try to stay away from trans fats. Saturated fats aren't as dangerous as trans fats, but should be consumed in moderation. Those are your animal fats. Monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats are actually healthful and should be consumed to give the consumer the feeling of satiety. They fill up your stomach, which can help prevent overeating, reduce the cholesterol in the blood, and have an anti-inflammatory effect on the body. So we have good fats and we have bad fats. I told you before that one of the things that I did while I was in the military was we were trying to figure out why pilots were falling out of the sky, trying to figure out why they were crashing the damn airplanes. And of course, we didn't really care about the pilots as much as we cared about the airplanes. Airplanes are worth, I don't know, $2 or $3 million, and pilots are only worth about $30,000 to $40,000. So when it comes down to money, yeah, there you go. So we didn't really care about the pilots. It was the fact that they were crashing the airplanes that pissed us off. So we started trying to figure out why they were having heart attacks when they were pulling so many G's. We discovered that it had to do with atherosclerosis and arteriosclerosis. So now we had to figure out how in the world we could reduce the amount of fat that these individuals were taking in. At the time, as I told you before, at the time the normal breakfast was a rasher of bacon, 3 or 4 eggs, and toast, and white toast. That was normal. My dad ate that every day, just about every day of his life. And my mother would cook him bacon and eggs for breakfast with white toast. And that's what he ate. And he lived to be 90 years old. But he was also a fairly hard-working fellow. So he was burning off a lot of that fat. So here we are. We need to figure out why these airplanes are falling out of the sky. We have to figure out why these guys are dying of a heart attack. And what we discovered was cholesterol. Cholesterol is necessary. It's a substance that we have, all of us have in our bodies. If we didn't have any cholesterol in our systems, then our bodies would fall apart. Cholesterol is used to make cell walls. It's used for myelination of nerve cells, so we wouldn't be very intelligent without cholesterol. And it is used in the production of hormones. So if you don't have any cholesterol in your system, you can't manufacture hormones. And of course, if you can't do that, you've got a problem. Cholesterol from our diets is non-essential since the liver manufactures all the cholesterol that our body actually needs. So we really don't need the fat we take in our systems. Animal fats that we eat circulate in the blood as serum cholesterol. So this is the saturated fats are buzzing around our system. Serum cholesterol is made up of proteins called lipoproteins. There are 3 types of lipoproteins, as it turns out. And this is one of the things that we discovered. In the old days, when we first started doing the research, all we found was cholesterol. And that's all we were able to fraction out. And then eventually we were able to determine what your cholesterol level was and what your triglyceride level was. Where cholesterol is one thing and triglyceride is something totally different. As it turns out, triglycerides are lipids that come from whatever you ate today. Cholesterol is whatever you ate last week. So it's kind of like glucose. Your glucose level, is that true? Yeah, the glucose level tells you how much glucose you have in your blood right now. But we can draw an A1C and we can tell whether you've been a good or bad person over the last week or so. That's what the A1C tells us. Well, the cholesterol and the triglyceride gives us the same information. If you eat a cheeseburger, then your triglyceride is going to be high. If you eat a cheeseburger, your cholesterol is probably going to be just about the same as it would be anyway. But if you have been eating a lot of fatty foods over the last week or so, then your cholesterol is going to be high. Now we, of course, can fractionate the lipoproteins, the cholesterol lipoprotein into two different types of lipoproteins. One of them is high-density lipoproteins, and the other one is low-density lipoprotein. LDLs and HDLs. The LDLs are too big, are really big, the HDLs. The HDLs are really, it's a really relatively large molecule, and because it's so large, it can't get stuck anywhere. It just kind of keeps flowing along, and it's big, and it's if it's like a snowball. If it hits a low-density level molecule, it picks it up. It actually carries it along, and it will take it out of the system. Eventually it makes its way down into your intestines, and then you get rid of it through your bowel movements. So HDLs are good because they're large molecules and they can't get stuck anywhere. But the LDLs are tiny or relatively small, and since they're so small, they get stuck on things. They get stuck on blood clots. They can get stuck on creases in your blood vessels. If you have too much cortisol, if you have too much if you are under too much stress, it will actually make grooves in your blood vessels. And the LDL can accumulate in those grooves. And then, of course, the more if LDL is there and more LDL shoots by, it can grab a hold of that one. All of a sudden, we've got a cholesterol plug that's being created. It's an LDL plug. But HDLs are good. So the more HDLs you have, the better off you are. The more LDLs you have, the worse off you are. So you have to be really careful about your diet as to whether you have high LDL or low LDL. During your adolescent years, the body is awash with hormones, and because of that, you don't have to worry about your cholesterol. Most people don't have to worry about their cholesterol unless they're obese. So if you have an obese baby that becomes an obese toddler, that becomes an obese child, then that individual actually has to worry about their cholesterol. They are not going to be producing enough hormones. The other thing that will happen to them, because they are obese, they will not be producing as many hormones as they should. So if you talk to a child that, if you talk to a male child, the male child seems like a male, right? They seem fairly masculine. If you talk to a female, they seem fairly feminine. But if you talk to an obese child, they seem to be somewhere in between. And the reason is because their hormone levels are being truncated by their obesity. Cholesterol is a precursor to hormones, so looking at cholesterol until you're an adult is really counterintuitive. You really don't have to do it unless the individual is overweight. If you have somebody that's been overweight all their life, then potentially you have a situation where that individual is going to accumulate too much cholesterol in their system. In adulthood, nutritionists suggest that individuals maintain a select level of lipids, a total cholesterol of less than 200 milligrams percent, an LDL less than 100 milligrams percent, triglycerides less than 100 milligrams percent, and an HDL that is as high as you can get it. So how in the world do we get a high HDL? Does anybody have any idea how we get HDLs? Where did they come from? Edison? He produces them? Oh, what God. Thanks. I'll take more. HDLs come from exercise. So we can create HDLs when we exercise. So the more exercise you do, the more HDLs you will have. And there are superfoods that create HDLs as well. And we're going to talk about the superfoods in just a second. Some people maintain an unhealthy lifestyle. They smoke, they are physically inactive, they have a diet high in cholesterol and saturated fats, and of course, the more animal fats that you take in, the more that you have to get rid of. Individuals with an unhealthy lifestyle have increased levels of LDLs and decreased levels of HDLs. And of course, we're talking about the blood now. Healthy individuals protect themselves from heart disease by elevating their HDL level by eating certain polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, in other words. Instead of eating a lot of meat, they eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. They also take in vitamin E, which creates HDLs. They have a low in saturated fat diet, and they have a high fiber diet, which takes out, actually fiber will take out LDLs as well. It cleans your colon, keeps your colon clean. 12% of men and 12% of women and 31% of men have low HDL. The other thing that we need to remember is, and this is kind of interesting, that if you're a female, estrogen will protect you from a lot of different things, and one of them is cholesterol, the LDLs. So if you're still ovulating, then potentially you've got enough estrogen in your system that it will protect you from LDLs. But men don't have that. We don't ovulate, and since we don't have that much estrogen in our systems, we aren't really protected from LDLs. So we see men with a relatively low HDL level and a high LDL level. What we look at when we're talking about HDLs and LDL is ratios. So you can have a high LDL level, but as long as you have a high HDL level, then you're probably okay, because remember, the HDLs are sweeping out all those LDLs. But of course, men have a problem, and females don't. Unfortunately, you don't have the same problem that we do. So that's one of the reasons why men die of heart disease far more readily than women do, because of their HDL-LDL ratio. While cholesterol is partially controlled by heredity, diet and lifestyle play a major role in the amount of cholesterol in the individual's system. The good news is that more and more people are getting their cholesterol checked. And with maintenance, the levels are declining. Those of us who have, well, since I've had a heart attack, one of the things they do is they give me a statin, which theoretically takes out the LDLs. And of course I exercise as well, which makes the doctor happy, because he doesn't have to worry about doing any more surgery on me. At least he hopes he doesn't have to, and I certainly hope he doesn't have to also. High cholesterol levels have been implicated in 1/3 of all cancer deaths in the United States. So not only do we have to worry about LDLs, but we also have to worry about cancer. Some fats will cause cancer. Saturated fats found in red meats and other animal products have been found to be the culprit in breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colorectal cancer. So that's one of the things that we tell people to stay away as much as possible from red meats, especially if they have a proclivity for any of these problems: prostate cancer, breast cancer, and colorectal cancer. So not only does it cause heart disease, it also can exacerbate cancer. Fruits and vegetables help fight cancers by providing vitamin A. Another word for that is beta-carotene. Beta-carotene is orange, which is kind of interesting. If you take a vitamin pill every morning and it has beta-carotene in it, which it should have vitamin A. If it has beta-carotene in it, it will turn your urine orange, or it'll turn dark yellow, which is kind of cool. I mean, I'm one of those people that I used to do urinalysis, so I got to see lots and lots of urine, and I got to gauge what color I'm dealing with here. It's really kind of a strange thing. I know it's very odd that anybody would even care about what color somebody's urine is, but of course that was one of my jobs. And that's the first thing they ask you: what color was the urine? And the reason they care is because if there's blood in the urine, guess what color it's going to be? If there's blood in the urine, what color will the urine be?
Red.
Red, of course. Or pink, depending on whether the blood is hemolyzed or not. And it will probably be cloudy, and that's the second thing you have to tell them. What does it look like? Is it clear or is it opaque? If it's cloudy, it means you can see through it, but you can see that there's something in it. And if it's opaque, it means you can't see through it at all. This is the second thing we had to tell everybody. I know how exciting this all got. Then we had to tell them how much water was in there. So we had to, water is 1.0001. It's comparing water to distilled water is what it's doing. So you have to compare the urine to distilled water. As odd as that seems. Anyway, that's one of the things that we had to do. Anyway, so fruits and vegetables have beta-carotene. It's the orange one, not the green one. It has beta-carotene, and that turns your urine yellow or orange. Selenium can also help, but only if the individual has a selenium deficiency. So I wouldn't suggest anybody taking selenium unless you know that you have a selenium deficiency. You're just throwing your money away. So if you actually take in selenium and you're taking in mega doses every day, guess what happens to the selenium you're taking in? What happens to it? Where does the selenium go? Your kidneys clean it out of your system and you pee it right out. So you'll have a high selenium in your urine, but you'll have a normal selenium. You're just buying something you don't really need. Vitamin C and vitamin E also help protect the body from open-ended molecules called free radicals. So we try to take in as much vitamin C and vitamin E. One of the things that we do in the wintertime is that we catch colds. And the reason we catch colds in the wintertime is because we're not taking in enough vitamin C. In the summertime we get it with fresh vegetables, but of course there's hardly any fresh vegetables in the wintertime. Potatoes have a lot of vitamin C in them. Citrus fruits have a lot of vitamin C in them, so we can take them in our diets. And that will keep us from getting colds. I have this is actually lemonade. I don't drink water. It tastes nasty. But lemonade tastes like lemons. I like that. This has probably half a lemon in it. It may have a whole lemon in it. Let me try. It's got a whole lemon in it. That's a lot of vitamin C. So that may be one of the reasons why I never get sick. I never catch a cold. I never get the flu. And I don't have, of course, I take in a lot of antioxidants, which will block the free radicals. The most common multiple chronic conditions are hypertension and diabetes, hypertension and heart disease, and hypertension and cancer. So that's one of the reasons why doctors are very sensitive to hypertension, and they try to lower your blood pressure. When I first started in medicine, the normal blood pressure was 150 over 80 or 90, and then they lowered it to 140 over 70 or 80, and now it's 130 over, who the hell knows, 60 or 70, I guess. When I first started in medicine, if somebody came in with a 130 over 50 or 60, we had to put them under observation to make sure that their blood pressure didn't tank, because we considered that a low blood pressure. Now, of course, it's considered high normal, as odd as that seems to everybody. And that's because we're far more sensitive to hypertension than we used to be. Of course, back then, a normal breakfast was 5 strips of bacon, 3 eggs, and toast, and coffee with fat in it, with cream in it. Not anymore. So things change over time. When we first started looking at cholesterol, the normal was considered to be 450. Now it's considered to be anything below 200. I can remember having my cholesterol taken when I was a young pup in the military, and it was like 150. And everybody's going, "Whoa, your cholesterol's really low. You need to raise your cholesterol, man. You need to eat more eggs," that kind of stupid stuff. Well, the normal at that point was 300, and now it's 200. So we have changed the rules because we've seen more and more people dying of heart disease, atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, because of accumulation of fat. Now it's somewhere in the 200 range, and that's one of the reasons why they're feeding everybody statins these days, trying to lower their cholesterol. What are we doing? It is thought that the increase in the levels of obesity may have something to do with the trend of hypertension. Superfoods, yogurt is considered a superfood. Low-fat or fat-free yogurt is higher in calcium than most other dairy products. We do need calcium, especially women need calcium. Yogurt contains proteins, it contains potassium, it has tons of other nutrients. It is sometimes reinforced with plant stanols and probiotics for a healthy gut. And of course, you need to be very careful with probiotics. Sometimes you can put bacteria in your system that you really can't handle, so you have to be careful as to what probiotics you're using. Eggs are another superfood. It's considered another superfood. They're nutritious, they're economical, and they're a good way to add protein to your diet. Eggs contain 12 vitamins and minerals, including choline, which aids in brain development and cognitive functioning. I was reading an article the other day that was talking about super brain foods, and right on the top of the list was eggs. So if you've got a young kid, then feed that puppy eggs. You can do that. You can feed kids eggs, and you don't have to really worry about it because you don't have to worry about their cholesterol. They say women can eat 5 eggs a week and men can eat 1. Men, I'm talking about adult males, because we don't have the estrogen that you guys have. Damn it. So, well, I guess if we had the estrogen, we'd probably act a little less masculine. So I don't know. I don't know how this stuff works. Anyway, so eggs are good for your brain. The protein makes those myelination, that whole connection of neurons with other neurons. Nuts are a good source of protein. They're heart-healthy fats. They have heart-healthy fats in them. They are a good source of fiber, and they have antioxidants. So nuts are good for you. In small doses, nuts can help lower your cholesterol and promote weight loss. Of course, they are fairly fatty. I mean, that's the whole purpose of nuts. To feed the plant as it's growing, so they are fairly fatty. But that's okay because all the fats in there are good fats. Kiwi, of course, these don't grow in the United States. Well, I guess they do. There are kiwi farms out in California. The kiwi is one of the most nutritionally dense foods known to man. One large kiwi contains a full day's supply of vitamin C and is also a good source for potassium, fiber, vitamin A, and vitamin E. Has anybody ever had one of these things, a kiwi? They taste like gooseberries, don't they? Have you ever tried gooseberries? Yeah, you've tried gooseberries, okay. Yeah, my aunt used to have gooseberries. Gooseberries are ripe for about, 30 minutes or something like that. So you got to pick them all before they rot. But they taste just like kiwis. My aunt used to have a whole field, well, it wasn't a field, but she had a whole fence row full of gooseberry bushes that we used to have to go out there. I mean, when gooseberries are ripe, you got to go pick them right now. They're the same color. They're the same color green. It's fluorescent green color. Gooseberry pie. Where did you have gooseberries, Edison? Albuquerque? I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it grows on the bush. Yeah. I guess what happened to all my aunt's gooseberry bushes? Yeah, they built a house right on top of it. That's all those wonderful. Yeah, can you find gooseberries anywhere? Hell no, you can't. Anyway, the kiwi is pretty healthy stuff. Quinoa. Quinoa is one of the healthiest grains on the planet. Guess where quinoa comes from? That's a good place. It's not there, but that's a good place. Quinoa.
Alabama.
Peru. Comes from Peru. The Inca used to have it. This was, the Incas.
I'm trying to look for that long row. I couldn't find any.
What, quinoa? Mm-hmm. My wife likes to cook with quinoa. It tastes kind of like, tastes like rice that has a kind of a nutty flavor. It's got an interesting texture. It's the same texture as everything else. I know, it's an Inca food. That's a Quichua word, means the grain of life. 1 cup of quinoa is high in protein, fiber, zinc, iron, vitamin E, and selenium. It can help control weight and lower your risk of diabetes and heart disease. This stuff is a great form of fiber. So instead of eating rice, throw some quinoa on somebody's plate. It doesn't, I don't know. I don't really like it all by itself. I got to put something on it or in it or around it, or I put gravy on it. So I don't know. You can put it in a soup, and it's a really good grain. It's tiny. It's tiny stuff, but it cooks into about half the size of a rice, of a piece of rice. Really kind of interesting. Another superfood are beans. They're full of insoluble fiber, which lowers your cholesterol, and soluble fiber, which makes you feel full and cleans out your colon, which is always good. Low fat. It's low in fat protein. It has low fat protein. It has carbohydrates, magnesium, and potassium. And all the beans, red beans, pinto beans, peas. Hummus, which are chickpeas, all of that stuff is pretty. Black beans are pretty good. What did I have the other day? I had red beans and rice. That's what I had. I had red beans and rice with sausage, smoked sausage. Mm-hmm. And then I put it over a can of green beans. Does that sound good? I love red beans and rice. Ever since I've lived in Mississippi, I love red beans and rice. Anyway, how about some more superfoods? How about salmon? Salmon is rich in omega-3 fatty acids. It has protein. It has iron. For a meat, it is low in saturated fats. The American Heart Association suggests that people eat heart-healthy salmon at least twice a week. Salmon's good stuff. I don't eat it. I can't eat fish, but I have lots of friends that eat fish. I have lots of mountain Indians from up north. Nez Perce. Were you there when, I'm trying to think of his name. We had a Nez Perce guy on Fort Belknap, and he brought a salmon meal to thank everybody for being so nice to him on the reservation. It was really nice. His dad brought it over. Salmon. But they're mountain Indians. They eat a lot of salmon. They used to, back in the day, when people were still hunting buffalo, they used to come out of the mountains to hunt buffalo for 2 or 3 days, and they get chased all over by the Dakota and Rogan, the black, they chase them all over. But then they get back up into the mountains and hunt. Anyway, Salish Kootenai. Salish and Kootenai are mountain tribes. They eat a lot of salmon. So fish is really big with those tribes because that's at the end of the spawn. You know, they're all climbing the lakes or not the lakes and streams, but the streams, trying to get up to their spawning grounds. And so a lot of the mountain tribes eat salmon, especially in the fall or in the spring when they're coming up to spawn. Broccoli is one of the cruciferous vegetables, along with kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and radishes. Those are all crucifers. These vegetables are high in vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, which vitamin K is one of the clotting factors. So vitamin K is actually quite important, and it has a lot of fiber in it. So the cruciferous vegetables are very healthy. So broccoli, if anybody can stand this stuff. A lot of people don't like the taste of cabbage, they don't like the taste of cauliflower, they don't like the taste of Brussels sprouts because it's too strong. The first George Bush hated broccoli, and he screamed that he wouldn't have any of it in his White House. You know, and the broccoli producers out in California were having a fit because George H.W. Bush had come out against broccoli. Anyway, I love this stuff. I love the flavor of it. A good bowl of boiled cabbage. I know. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. The Germans will pickle red cabbage. They'll pickle this stuff, and they'll cook it for every meal, which is German food is usually pretty fatty, but of course not with the red cabbage in there. Okay, sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are part of the dark orange vegetable family, which are orange because of their high beta-carotene content, high in vitamin A, rich in potassium, which reduces bone loss. They're low in sodium, which lowers blood pressure. So actually beta-carotene is really good for you. Once upon a time in the 60s and 70s, there was a movement to juice carrots. And they would take carrots and they make it into juice, and then these people were drinking carrot juice, and you could buy carrot juice in the health food stores, and these guys didn't have to go out and tan because their skin was turning orange from all the carrots, from all the beta carotene that they were taking in. But it's relatively healthy. I mean, turning your skin orange doesn't really mean anything, but it was kind of interesting. Berries are a high water and fiber, and they are high in water and fiber and low in calories. They help you feel full. They control your blood sugar. So any kind of berry is good for diabetes, especially blueberries. Berries are full of phytonutrients and antioxidants, and that's especially blueberries. Berries satisfy your sweet tooth with a fraction of the calories and the fat. So there you go. All the superfoods: berries, sweet potatoes, crucifers, salmon, beans, quinoa, kiwi fruit, and nuts. What's that? Eggs. Got one more. Yogurt. Yogurt's the last one. There you go. Those are all the superfoods. Here, I'm sorry. Did I miss anything?
Nothing.
I think that's a red meat, so. Yeah, mutton. Yeah. Beef. What? Fish? I already said fish.
Steak. Steak? Beef? You gotta be kidding me.
No, it's not very good for you. You guys didn't start having problems. You didn't have any problems eating buffalo. As soon as you started eating beef, you started having problems. They're fatty. It's a lot fattier food. If you kept eating buffalo and venison, you would have been okay. Weight control has 4 controlling factors. First of all is heredity, of course. Some people have a higher metabolic rate, which changes the amount of food that they can consume. Younger and more active individuals have a higher metabolic rate. Fat has a lower metabolic rate than muscle does. And that's one of the reasons why if an individual can establish a muscle mass, then they won't have any problems losing weight. Women, of course, have to maintain at least 10% body fat in order to ovulate. And because of that, women have have more fat on their bodies than men do. Fat has a low, okay, we were talking about that. Men have 10 to 20% more muscle than women do, and that's one of the reasons why they're stronger. It's also a reason why they don't have nearly the problem losing weight that women do. The human body is a well-balanced instrument that takes in and burns calories within 1% of its needs every year. Even if you try to binge eat, if you're a binge eater, you still will probably maintain about the same body weight. Because of this, whether we exercise or watch our diet or not, we tend to fluctuate around a certain weight. This is known as our weight set point. I've worn the same size pants since 1999, which is kind of amazing. I went up a size. I went up an inch. Okay, I was wearing 32-inch waist, and then I went up to 33. And I still wear 33s. This is 17 years later. This is when I'm supposed to turn into a toad. I'm supposed to get fat when you're in your 50s and 60s. 1999, I turned 50 in 1999, and I haven't actually changed my pants size at all in the last 18 years. I can remember the day that it happened. I can remember the day I started wearing 33s instead of 32s. It just broke my heart. The other problem that I was having was my thighs. I got fairly strong thighs, and 32s have really skinny legs. I don't know. Do we get all of our pants from those skinny little Asian people making pants? The thighs were so tiny. I couldn't wear them anymore. So I went up to 33 almost just so that my thighs would be about the right, or my pants would fit my thighs. It's really kind of strange. People that are bodybuilders or exercisers, a lot of times they have a hard time finding clothes that actually fit because their muscle mass is different than everybody else's. Especially those skinny little Asian guys without any ass. Did I say ass on it?
Yeah.
Those guys, I'll tell you what, sometimes the pants fit around the waist, but there's just no butt in those things, and you can't get them on. Then you can't get them on your thighs. Always irritates me. Who are they making these pants for? This is Seth Rogen, of course. Whoops, that's Seth Rogen. He has gone down when he was in college, smoking a lot of pot and drinking a lot of beer. Of course, you can see he was kind of big, kind of paunchy. Now, since he was the Green Lantern, he had to muscle up for the role of the Green Lantern. He lost a lot of weight, but what he lost baby fat. That's what he was losing. And now, if you see Seth Rogen any place, he looks more like the guy on the right than the guy on the left. I think he stopped smoking as much pot as he was smoking before. The same thing with Galifianakis, or whatever the guy's name is. He's lost a lot of weight as well. Studies where normal-weighted people ate an excess of calories a day showed that their bodies tried to maintain its set point by increasing incidental physical activity. So your body will tell you how big it wants to be. If you weigh yourself every day, you'll probably weigh within 1 or 2 pounds all year. And I weighed myself this morning. I weighed 185.4. Yesterday I weighed 183.6. The day before that it was 183.7. Last week I think the heaviest I weighed was 187.0. You know, it's all within a couple of pounds of each other. And I weigh myself every morning. This is my weight set point. I'm right around 185. And that's where I'm going to be for an extended length of time, I guess. I've got a 33-inch waist. I've had a 33-inch waist for 17 years. So what if I do? What if I eat a bowl of chili and I eat all the rest of the chili and the rest of the pot, just to get rid of it, of course. So I'm a little bit really full that night, and then I weigh myself the next morning. I weigh 188. What is my body going to do? My body's probably going to make me walk more, or I'm going to burn a lot more fat. Why? Because I weigh more than it wants to weigh, so I will have all of these incidental physical activity things. I will feel more energy, so I'll get up and I'll move a lot more. Studies where overweight people were cut their calorie intake drastically showed that their bodies maintain their weight set point by slowing down their metabolism. And of course, this is a problem with trying to lose weight. If you want to lose 10 pounds, or you want to lose 20 pounds, how in the world do you do that? Well, you increase your exercise and you decrease your calorie intake. Well, that sometimes doesn't work because your body will go into starvation mode and it will just slow your basal metabolism rate so that you won't burn as many calories. And that, of course, is very frustrating for people. In a study from World War II, a researcher from Minnesota experimented with calorie levels with volunteers to discover what would happen to Europeans if the war drug on. And they were worried because the Germans were eating up all the food. They weren't feeding the Dutch. They weren't feeding the French. People were starving, not to death, of course. They weren't starving them to death. They were working them to death sometimes, but they weren't starving them to death. So we were worried about what would happen if we didn't liberate Europe. And of course we liberated Europe in 1944, but we didn't liberate Asia until 1945. So what happened in Asia that didn't happen in Europe? Does anybody know the history of what happened in Asia? They had like 8 million people starved to death in China. They were eating each other. They were actually eating each other, as sad as that may seem. So we were really worried about this. We knew everything that was taking place. We knew about the concentration camps. We knew about the death camps in Germany. We knew about the prisoners of war that had been captured at the beginning of the war. We knew that those guys were starving to death, and we knew that we needed to liberate them. And we wanted to figure out what we could possibly do to help them. They went from 3,500 calories a day to 1,570 calories a day. They dropped from 157 pounds to 115 pounds in 6 months. Their heart rates dropped from 55 beats per minute to 35 beats per minute. Now, if you're really healthy, then 55 beats per minute is okay. How about 35 beats per minute? Those people must have been really sprinting. They must have been real runners if their heart rate went down to 35. Their bowel movements decreased to once a week because they weren't taking in enough calories. Their body stopped digesting food as rapidly as it was digesting food before. That's one of the reasons why their heart rate went down. They didn't have any energy. They were only having bowel movements once a week, if you can imagine only having bowel movements once a week. Researchers have discovered that hunger comes from the lateral area of the hypothalamus. As an individual's blood sugar level drops, the lateral hypothalamus will secrete more and more of the hunger-triggering hormone orexin. Satiety is triggered in the ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus. Fat is stored in the body in its storage cells called adipocytes. The normal weighted person will maintain about 30 billion adipocytes in their system. An obese person may have as many as 200 billion adipocytes. The difference is the amount of fat in each adipocyte. Of course, you've seen people that were grossly obese. these individuals probably had close to 200 billion adipocytes. Adipocytes will trigger hunger. The stronger the feeling of hunger, and of course that's one of the things that people that are really large will complain about. They're hungry all the time. Why? Because their adipocytes are screaming for them to eat. And so rather than all the other hormones controlling their desire to eat, these individuals eat all the time because their adipocytes tell them to. Insulin is produced in the pancreas. When glucose levels fall, we produce insulin, which makes us feel hungry. It is we don't really have to worry about this because we have so much food to eat. We rarely actually feel hungry. But if you haven't eaten anything all day, then potentially you'll feel hungry. And one of the reasons is because your body is producing insulin and telling you that you need to eat. When we consume food, glucose levels rise and we produce less insulin and we feel less hungry, of course. The intestine also releases cholecystokinin, which signals satiety. Cholecystokinin it comes out of your gallbladder. We produce a lot of cholecystokinin from our gallbladders. So could we control people's hunger by injecting them with cholecystokinin? Does that work? As it turns out, it doesn't, because it makes you nauseous. If you have too much cholecystokinin in your system, you throw up, which unfortunately doesn't work. It is cholecystokinin that has been blamed for people's sweet tooth. It makes you want to not only consume sugars, but also to consume fats. And of course, most of our sugar does have fat in it now. Chocolate, especially chocolates, if you crave chocolates. The other two other appetite-inducing hormones are ghrelin and peptide YY. Ghrelin is secreted by the stomach, which induces the pituitary gland to release growth hormone, which stimulates the appetite. So ghrelin makes you hungry. Peptide YY is an appetite suppressant. So potentially we could inject peptide YY into the system and make you not as hungry as you were before. Overweight women are more likely to be depressed and suicidal than women of a normal weight, as interesting as that is. Oddly, underweight men are more likely to be depressed and suicidal than men of normal weight. So it's underweight men that are suicidal and depressed, and it's overweight women that are suicidal and depressed. The most frequent means of measuring obesity is body mass index. BMI is calculated by multiplying your weight in pounds by 705 and dividing by your height in inches, and then again by the same thing. So you divide it by however tall you are, and then you divide it by however tall you are again. I did it this morning, and my BMI was 29, which tells you that I should be really fat. I should be really fat. I'm overweight. According to my BMI, I'm overweight. Now, why am I not overweight? What the hell's going on? Has to do with my muscle mass. Remember, muscle is a lot heavier, muscle's a lot heavier and denser than fat is. Because I'm a bodybuilder, because I have strong, powerful thighs, and all this muscle mass, I have a high BMI. Johnny's sick, he's going to go throw up because of what I just said. Why? Yeah, exactly. Normal body fat for men is about 18 to 23%. Mine's about 14 to 15%. So I'm doing a little bit better than normal. Normal body fat for women is between 25 and 30%. Weightlifters and other athletes tend to maintain excessive muscle mass and little body fat, but maintain a BMI in the 25 to 30 range. As I said before, mine's 29, which is kind of high, and it means that I'm either fat or I'm muscly. And actually, I tend to be relatively muscly. It doesn't determine where the fat is being carried, and of course the BMI just tells you how much you weigh as compared to your height. So this guy is, this guy's at 29.9. As he gains more muscle mass, As you see, he's pretty ripped right here. He had a 22 BMI, and here he is at 31, and here he is at 30.7. So as you can see, the more muscle mass you have, the more ripped you are, the higher your BMI. And of course that's a problem, or not a problem actually. It just makes the BMI inaccurate. BMI is supposed to tell you if you're obese or not. Another way to measure obesity is by measuring your waist to hip ratio. Measure your waist at the slimmest point, measure your hips at their widest point, divide your waist by your hip measurement. Anything below 0.8 is normal for a woman, anything below 0.95 is normal for a man. So there you go. That's another way of looking at things. Hazards of obesity: the incidence of hypertension in people who are 50% or more overweight is 3 to 5 times that of normal weight individuals. This guy, of course, has a hypertension problem. He also obviously has a weight problem. The prevalence of metabolic syndrome, coronary artery disease, stroke, diabetes, inflammation increases with your BMI, unless, of course, your BMI is high because of your muscle mass. Overweight men are 6 times as likely to develop metabolic syndrome. Obese men are 32 times as likely to develop metabolic syndrome. 32 times. Overweight women are 5 times as likely to develop metabolic syndrome. Obese women are 17 times as likely to develop metabolic syndrome. Any guesses as to why women's ratios are so much lower than men's? What is it about I almost said chicks. I got in trouble with just using the word chicks. So what is it about you young ladies that make you less susceptible to heart disease or to metabolic syndrome, no matter how big you are? What is it? What do you guys have that we don't have? You have to maintain more body fat in order to ovulate. Menstrual period, your estrogen, that's exactly it. Damn it. You got estrogen. Of course, if we had more estrogen, we'd be not acting as masculine as we are. So yeah, it's your menstrual cycle, it's your estrogen. Once again, it's your estrogen. You like that water stuff?
No, I don't know. I
That's
have to take some from my mom's house.
Good. Way to go. So it's the estrogen that makes women, protects women. There's some healthy kids. What do you think? Yeah. Obese children are more likely to have problems that we used to only see in adults. And of course, we didn't see this until like 10 or 15 years ago. We started seeing really chubby kids. And we couldn't figure out what the world's going on. Why? And these kids were starting to have all kinds of interesting problems. They were having cardiomyopathy. Their hearts were flabby. They were maintaining too much body fat. What the hell's going on? High blood pressure, high cholesterol, breathing problems like asthma and sleep apnea. They have fatty liver disease. This is something we didn't even see in adults unless they were really old. Type 2 diabetes in a kid this age. We also started seeing adolescents that were coming down with type 1 diabetes. Well, type 1 diabetes in the old days was developed, you were born with type 1 diabetes. You didn't develop type 1 diabetes. And all of a sudden, we started seeing people developing type 1 diabetes. Any idea what the hell's going on? Food, exactly.
Fast food.
Yeah, fast food, exactly. They were eating too many cheeseburgers. They were eating, that's all they would eat. Pizza, exactly, pizza.
Hot wings.
Hot wings, I'm not sure about the hot wings. There's not enough meat on hot wings. I don't know why people order here. This is something we used to throw away on the chicken. Nobody ate wings in the old days. Nobody ate wings. That's the dumbest thing in the world. There's no meat on wings. Now, why in the world are you guys eating wings? And the only reason you eat them is because it's got barbecue sauce on it. You put barbecue sauce on something and people will eat anything.
Right.
I've got an old pizza. Let's put barbecue sauce on. Anyway, okay, so there are problems with obesity, and we're seeing this now. During adolescence, obesity and metabolic syndrome are linked to impairments in brain structure. My God, their brains aren't even developing correctly. It reduces the hippocampal volume. Hippocampus, this is where your memory comes from. It reduces the white matter. White matter, that's the good stuff. That's the part that allows you to think. That's what makes you smart, and it's reducing this in these kids. Obesity promotes hyperinsulinemia, an endocrine disorder in which insulin progressively loses its effectiveness in sweeping glucose from the bloodstream into the cells of the body. This leads, of course, to type 2 diabetes. Why? Because people are accumulating fat around their guts. That's where type 2 diabetes comes from. The liver manufactures more triglycerides and cholesterol in people with excess body weight, increases the risk of arthritis, it increases the risk of gout, and it also increases the risk of gallbladder disease. The gallbladder produces enzymes that break down fat in your body. Gallbladder disease has to do with eating too many fats, and therefore the gallbladder starts to accumulate stones, or it will stop being work efficiently, and then they have to have the gallbladder taken out. So what happens if you lose your gallbladder, since it breaks down fats in your body? So what happens next? We could just take the gallbladder out of everybody, and actually their cholesterol would go down. But what happens if you don't have a gallbladder? It gives you diarrhea, because you have all that fat that you can't break down in your stomach anymore, and now you're shooting a lot more fat through your digestive system that can't be absorbed, and now, of course, it gives you diarrhea, which is always fascinating. Complications following surgery happen more often among the obese. There is a strong correlation between obesity and cardiovascular disease in men and women, even after statistical adjustments are made for blood pressure, cholesterol, smoking, and age. So obesity has a lot to do with heart attacks. Obesity increases the risk of certain cancers, and we already saw three cancers: prostate cancer, breast cancer, and colorectal cancer that's caused by obesity. Gold digger, yeah, she's a gold digger, all right. Why do people wear clothes that have words on their butt? So we have to look at their butt to read what's going on. Why do they do that?
That's the first one I seen.
Is that right? The first one that you've seen. I'm impressed. Among adults, obesity is associated with lower psychological well-being, especially among women, and with a marked increase in depression, as we saw before. They're also more suicidal. Obese people are mistakenly stereotyped as being slow, lazy, and undisciplined. Compared to women of equal intelligence, obese women earn less money, they are less likely to be married, and they are underrepresented among corporate CEOs. Wait a minute, this lady, I showed you all these fat ladies, but all of a sudden I've got a lady that looks like a skeleton. Before age 65, obesity makes it more likely that you will die. However, after the age of 65, the people that are most likely to die are the people who are underweight. So suddenly at 65, you have to go from skinny to fat. Well, not to fat. You just need to start eating more because you don't have the reserves that you had before. This lady is in danger of dying relatively, well, if she ever gets sick, she doesn't have the reserves to support herself. So she's more likely to die. Another risk factor is yo-yo dieting, which puts excessive strain on the cardiovascular system. So skinny after 65 is not good, is very bad. Twin and adoption studies have shown that heredity plays about 30%, about a 30% chance of causing obesity. So if you have obesity in your family, 30% of it is genetic, so you have a 30% chance to be fat as well. Heredity contributes to obesity by dictating the basal metabolic rate, and of course that tells you how much energy you're going to burn in order to maintain your system. One longitudinal study that lasted 32 years found that people were the most likely to be obese if they had friends who were obese. The closer the friend, the more likely that they would be obese. People under stress are more likely to eat in the absence of hunger. And of course, your friend is telling you what to do. My friends, when I was in the service, told me that when I broke up with my first wife, or when she actually left me, there's something wrong with me. Obviously, there was something. That I should get drunk. That's what they told me I should do. And of course, I didn't. I had 2 kids to take care of. I just tried it the one time and went, boy, this is stupid. I'm not going to do this anymore. And because I wouldn't get drunk anymore, they didn't want to have anything to do with me because I wasn't like them. Something's wrong with people. The average woman in the United States today is 5'4" tall. She weighs between 140 and 150 pounds. Her waist size is 34 to 35. Her dress size is 12 to 14. And that's what she looks like. That's a woman with those measurements. I typed those measurements into the computer and I got this picture. 50 years ago, the same woman weighed 120 pounds. Her waist was between 24 and 25 inches, and she wore a size 8 dress. Wow. In 50 years, women have gone from a 34 to 35 inch, or from a 24 to 25 inch waist. They gained 10 inches of waist in 50 years, on average, as strange as that may seem. And they've gained 20 to 30 pounds. So if you look at women from the 50 years ago. 50 years ago would be what, 1960s? Yeah. So if you look at a movie from the 1960s, you never saw fat women. You never saw anybody pudgy. But there wasn't anybody pudgy out there. Not only that, this is weird because there was a lot. Women weren't exercise, or they weren't. There were no varsity athletics for them to play. There was no softball. There was no volleyball. There was no basketball. Yet they were still skinnier. And now, 50 years later, 5'4", 140 to 150 pounds, with a 34 to 35 inch waist. The average woman in the United States. 11.9% of the boys living in a family that is above poverty level are obese. 21% of the boys living below the poverty level are obese. Do we know why? What does poverty have to do with obesity? You don't have as much food. So why are they fatter?
We don't have much. We don't have many options.
Exactly. So what food are you going to eat? You're going to eat crap food. You're going to eat the cheapest food you can find. And in order to make it taste good, they're going to put sugar and salt in it. It's going to raise your sodium level. It's going to raise your fat level, unfortunately. 12% of the girls living above the poverty level are obese. 19.3% of the girls living below the poverty level are obese. As we can see, she's not an unattractive woman, but she's kind of overweight, just a little bit. He's not too bad. He's married to her. I don't understand these things. I don't understand romance. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Both men and women who have a college degree are less likely to be overweight. Reasons for people in the lower socioeconomic status being overweight: limited access to healthcare services, less knowledge about the dangers of obesity, less likely to be able to afford fresh fruits and vegetables, and less exercise. I don't usually go down to Chinley's. As a matter of fact, did I tell you guys I haven't been to Chinley since 2017? I haven't gone, in the last 3 months I haven't gone down to Chinley. But if you are from Chinley, I'm not insulting the town. It's just that Bosch's, I'm not going to eat it. I'm not going to buy my produce with Bosch's. It's not very good. It's really not very good. So if I go to the store, I either go to Albuquerque, or Gallup. That's where I buy my groceries. Because the produce is better. I can find good fruits, I can find good vegetables. So, I go down to Bosch's and cauliflower looks like it's brown instead of white. Ooh. The bananas are brown instead of yellow or green. I like them. Apples are old and mushy. Anyway, I don't go to Bosch's. I'll drive down to Gallup, damn it, or I'll drive all the way to Albuquerque and go to the commissary. Jeez, that food down there is like a third the cost of it anywhere else. At the commissary. Military. Reasons people who are low socioeconomic status are obese. They don't eat breakfast. They don't eat green vegetables. They don't eat fruits. They don't exercise. They watch too much television. They don't get at least 7 hours of sleep a night. There you go. Dieting alone does not usually work to take off weight and keep it off. A good program will not only include dieting, but a regular exercise program as well. You've got to have an exercise program. You have to have a dieting program. You need to raise your basal metabolic rate. Americans spend billions of dollars on weight control programs every year. They want a magic pill. They want you to give them the pill because they're too lazy, and I almost used the F word, the fun word. They're too lazy to get off their butts to exercise. So they want a magic pill that will, I don't know, they want to take something, an electrical thing, and put it on their gut, and so it will shock them and it will make them lose weight. That's what they want. They don't want to move. What's wrong with people? I was so proud. I was driving down to Gallup on Saturday, and here's all these joggers up and down the road. I'm going, good for you. Way to go, ladies. Oh, they're all ladies. They'll turn to this one. I know, the guys are lazy.
No.
I'm sure they were out in the mountains cutting wood or doing something. I'm sure they were doing fixing their, yeah. They weren't sitting in front of the television watching NASCAR or something. I don't know. Weight loss won't happen unless you are motivated and self-disciplined. You need to set a weight loss goal that is realistic. And this is my wife has been in all the weight loss programs. She's not there. What am I looking outside for? Like she's peeking in the corner, around the corner. She's up in Iowa. Anyways, when she starts on the diet, she says, I want to lose 50 pounds. Geez, you know how long it should take you to lose 50 pounds? You should lose, 1, maybe 2 pounds a week? It's going to take her 6 months to lose 50 pounds. Before she stays on her diet for about a month, she loses 2 or 3 pounds, or 4 or 5 pounds, which is okay, because you should be losing 1 pound a week, maybe 2. And here she only loses 5 pounds, and she gets discouraged. So she stops her dieting program. Well, you need a realistic goal. Small goals can be adjusted downward when the small goals are accomplished. And of course, if she lost the 5 pounds, and that's great, she needs to say, well, next month I'll lose 6 pounds. By golly. Her other problem is she's got back problems and she can't exercise very well. She likes to swim. Well, you can see how well this lady did. She did a pretty good job of losing weight. I can't remember how long it took her. I think 3 months to get down to this. She was doing pretty well. Of course, she's a young pup. My wife's not. Losing weight, a little weight, make healthy food choices, eat fruits, eat vegetables, eat whole grains, eat legumes, eat healthy fats. In other words, don't eat as many red meats. Eat a small portion. I'm going to show you what the portion size should be. Get more exercise, burn calories. If you exercise, it burns calories. It suppresses your appetite. It helps lower your weight set point. And of course, this guy had just started, and I haven't really looked in on him to see how he's doing, but this was him at the beginning.
That's a guy?
That's a guy, yeah. I think so. He's got really short hair. He's got awfully large feet for a woman. He's kind of big. That's a guy. Yeah, that's a guy. Keep tempting foods out of sight. Buy mostly fresh whole foods. Buy lots of fruits, vegetables, and fish, and lean proteins like eggs and low-fat dairy products. Avoid processed packaged foods. These are all processed foods. And that's another reason why people of lower socioeconomic status, they eat a lot of packaged foods. They eat a lot of ramen noodles, as odd as that may seem. There's not very many calories in ramen noodles, but theoretically it will fill up your stomach. I don't like ramen noodles myself. I like Japanese noodles. They're a little bit more expensive, but it really tastes like Japanese noodles. They're really good. That's a portion size. If it fits in the palm of your hand, that's a portion size. There you go. Keep meals simple and modest in size. Even when eating healthy foods, eat small portions. Now, personally, if I only ate this much food, I would be really hungry. So I had lasagna for supper last night. It was about that size, but it was about that tall. It was good. My wife made it before she left. Don't starve yourself to eat one big meal. This eating pattern slows metabolism and causes calories to be stored as fat. And of course, this is what Jenny Craig does. This is what all of those Weight Watchers, they have these small portions. They have this set amount of food that you can eat, and you can accumulate. Come on in. Come on in. You can come in. That's all right. No, you don't want to come in. You can come in. Yeah, you can eat. What they do is they add up points, and at the end of the week, if you have enough points left over, you can eat a big meal. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. According to this, it's not a good thing. You can drink that beer. You can eat that monster cheeseburger with eggs and I don't know. Doesn't look good. Eat slowly and beware of binge eating. Eat slowly. What time is it? Okay. People who eat slowly tend to eat less. Conversely, you should not eat quickly. Eat when you drink alcohol or feel anxious because you will binge eat. You'll eat a lot. You'll eat fatty foods because you're trying to get over your depression, your anxiety, and fatty foods will do that to you. These situations can cause you to overeat, of course, and so you need to be very, very careful as to how you eat. One of my wife's problems is, and this I'm complaining about my wife again, one of my wife's problems is she eats really fast. When she was young, her mother was crazy. Did I say crazy? Can I say crazy? Her mother was crazy, so and her mother wanted to talk to her at the table. So in order to get away from her mother, she would eat really fast and get away. And so she eats really, really fast. I eat so slow. My son eats even slower than I do. It'll take him 2 hours to eat something. He doesn't even start until the food is cold. The kid's nuts. Anyway, he eats really, really slow. He's a bodybuilder. I'm surprised he consumes anything. Little monkey. Come on in. No, come on in. Pick a couple chairs and here. The kid gets this chair. This is his chair. That's your chair, okay? It's the special chair. You're welcome. The rest of these people are just students, but you're special. What are we talking about? Why don't we stop right here? We'll pick this up next time. Anyway, okay. Yeah, that's how you lose weight. We're talking about losing weight.